I don't know, just a little stupid theory I have about consciousness is that it's just a network of energy. Like anytime you have a network of synapses or anything in the brain firing information, you create this network. And so I think that anything with like a network of energy or communication can create a consciousness.
Hello, and thank you very much for tuning into the first installment of Subversion, a webcast project where I will be chronicling the life and times of artists you'll come to hear from. You can expect to mostly hear from musicians, as that is the focus of this project, but I do hope to get on a wide variety of creatives on here. In this interview, you may notice at some point I kind of get tripped up and I ask the same question that I believe I may have asked earlier. And to give you an excuse, I had my digital interface crash on me and I lost like 45 minutes of really good interview material. So at some point I kind of get nervous because I don't remember if I've asked this question before. I don't know. Anyway, I'm probably more critical of myself than I need to be, and you probably don't want to listen to me bitch about myself. But anyway, that happens. But this is an interview with a guy that I found online named Baard. He makes excellent music, and I really do hope that you check out his stuff and support him and every local artist that you hear on this show. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/subversionwebcast, all one word. And you can find me on SoundCloud at the exact same tag. There you can kind of keep up with me and see exactly what's going on with the project. So without wasting too much more of your time, here is Baard.
My name is Baard. Well, I go by Baard. My name is Mike Johnson. But since high school, I've been making music under the name Baard, obviously changing around the spelling a little bit, but it's always been the same name, the same idea, same persona.
When I was really young, I listened to like some of the pop rap stuff like Nelly, and
Oh, yeah.
I think that was one of my first CDs was Nelly, and I thought it was just the coolest thing ever when I was like 12 years old.
Oh, yeah.
And then
You can't avoid those.
yeah, and then I got into
hitters
like
there.
new metal and stuff like that when I got older. So it's just like, fuck rap music, that shit's lame. Like I don't
Right.
identify with that. And then as you get older, you certainly start to appreciate all different mediums of music. So yeah, why don't you tell me a little bit about growing up? You said you were raised in Minnesota, right?
That's right. Raised in St. Paul, Minnesota, in the very house that my father grew up in. So, yeah, I love the city very much. I love Minneapolis. I love St. Paul. One of the coolest metropolitan areas in the world, I think. Mm-hmm. It's very rare, very cool culture. There's a huge, huge art culture here, which I'm, very fortunate to be, to be a part of, because I feel like if I was born anywhere else, not only in the country, but anywhere else in Minnesota even, I don't know if I'd be a musician as my career, because I wouldn't think to myself that is a possible career. I wouldn't see through all these people surrounding me that if they can do it, I can do it.
Right. Yeah, and I don't know if Duluth has much of a hip hop scene. They seem to be more of like the hippie kind of folk music scene going on up there.
Yeah, it's interesting. I did one of my first shows as Baard. I actually did up in Duluth.
Oh, okay. So there is obviously there has to be some sort of hip hop up there.
I mean, they have a decent college population up there. So, I mean, you can, if you're anyone with a decent name, you can go up there and get some people to come out. It's funny, that wasn't really the case when we went up there. The guy who booked us kind of scheduled it on their homecoming night, so it was one of those shows where no one really came except for all the other artists, which is great, because a lot of these underground hip hop shows. Well, not a lot of them, but a few of them. Sometimes it's only just the people on the bill that attend. On the really underground ones, the ones where not a lot of people come, and it's a great time because, if I'm up there performing and the only people in the crowd are a bunch of creative people, that's totally fine with me. Right. Like just a bunch of rappers hanging out, I'm totally cool with that as long as people are vibing.
So speaking of the local hip-hop scene, you were telling me a story about how you went and saw Atmosphere when you were in 8th grade. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that?
That's right. That was easily the most important musical moment for me. A lot of artists have that moment where they realized that music is what they want to do with their life, and that was definitely mine. I hadn't ever been to a concert really, and my buddy asked me to go to this Atmosphere show. I had no idea who Atmosphere was, but we went. It was at the Fitzgerald. It was put on by The Current. Brother Ali was there, Chuck D was there, and Atmosphere did kind of this like acoustic set, and it was just so gripping. Like I'd never heard anything like it before. I'd been exposed to plenty of hip hop and rap music, but I'd never heard something so relatable, something so pure, really. So that just totally, engrossed my attention at that show. And afterwards, I made sure to talk to Slug and tell him how important that set was to me. It really touched me, and I told him that it was my first time hearing him, and he just loved that. So he went backstage and grabbed this. He grabbed this little booklet, and it was "When Life Gives You Lemons, You Paint That Shit Gold." It was the deluxe edition of the album, and it was actually 3 months before the record was released. So I didn't realize how like crazy lucky I was getting that way ahead of time. The deluxe edition too, which was like a lyric book. It had all these pictures that Slug drew, a lot of really cool content. And that moment, I still think about it all the time because like if he didn't go backstage, get that record for me, I wouldn't have listened to it every day for the next year. I wouldn't have been so into hip hop and so into rapping. I wouldn't have gotten to rapping in myself probably, which turned into producing, which turned into what I'm doing now. So I feel like that was a really, really big moment. And, every time I've met Slug since, I always bring it up how important it was to me. And he just loves that because...
Oh, you've met him since then?
Oh, yeah, plenty of times.
Nice.
I used to go to Soundset every year, so I'd always do the meet and greet. I'm always trying to talk with them after shows and stuff, or talk to like Brother Ali at Fifth Element or Slug at Fifth Element. They do a lot of events where you can interact with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I used to go to Fifth Element when I was on break for school because I went to MCTC.
Oh yeah,
and Fifth Element is just right, down the street from.
That's right. Yeah.
From there, so yeah, I've went there quite a bit. But Atmosphere was big for me when I was younger too, because like we had talked about before, hip hop for young white kids, there's not much, especially if you're from the Midwest, where it's not as crazy as South Chicago or East New York.
Absolutely.
Or whatever. So
I, as a 15-year-old white kid, didn't really relate to all of the gangbanging lyrics that everything else was rapping about, but I totally related to this one song really sticks out in particular that Slug played at that show, and it was he never released it on a big record, but it was Not Another Day, and there were 3 different characters throughout the song. Each character got a verse, and it was just about living a hard life, whether it was one verse was about a kid getting bullied, one was about a single mother, and the other was just about a drifter.
Tell me about playing shows here within the hip hop scene in Minneapolis, St. Paul.
It's a really wonderful thing because the hip hop scene here, and it all started with Atmosphere, Rhyme Sayers. They really set the groundwork for a hip hop community. The current market of hip hop artists in the cities was definitely influenced by those first guys like Slug, Sage, Brother Ali, all those guys. So it's a lot of people just like me who in high school they heard those guys and they're like, damn, I could totally do that. And it's really wonderful because you can go to any, like I go to 1 or 2 just underground hip hop shows a week and they're like $3-5. So it's totally affordable to just go around and hang out with your friends, go hear some local MC spit, go to a beat battle. Those are starting to come back now, which I'm really happy about.
Cool.
But the scene here is just so fun. Like if you're going to like a Bobby Raps show or an Alan Kingdom show, these guys who are starting to, come up a little more, you're seeing this demographic of kids that you didn't really see before. It's just all these young hip high schoolers, these young hip college kids who are at these shows. It's just so great to see because it's like that's what all the interesting kids are doing now. All like I don't know. There's so many like kind of cookie cutter kids around the cities, just naturally. And you see all the weird kids go out to these hip hop shows. That's kind of the thing to do for the artsy kids. So I love the scene here. I love the people that are involved. I love going to hip hop shows because you just meet the funnest people and just the weirdest people, and I love that. So playing shows, I've done a handful of shows around here. Not really any big ones yet. Those will start happening within the year with this group I'm doing right now. But like I was saying before, even if it's just the other people who are performing that are there in the audience, like that's good enough for me. Right. As long as I'm playing for someone who's feeling it, and especially other artists, that's very, very important, is to, I'm getting recognized by other creatives. I get to play my music for other creatives. And
yep. I'm sure they give you pretty good, critiques and whatnot. And,
oh, yeah. That's how you make your connections. That one week they're seeing you perform, then the next week you're in the studio with them because that's how you make connections around here.
Yeah, for sure. So other than Atmosphere, what are some other inspirations from the hip-hop world that you can think of?
That's pretty much my hip-hop influence. There've certainly been others that have made me realize that this is something I could do, whether it was like this. I used to follow this rapper on YouTube called Wax, and he really introduced to me the idea of self-marketing through YouTube. He sustained his hip-hop career off of YouTube.
Nice.
So that definitely opened my eyes to possibilities with distribution. But musically, hip-hop is just one of the genres of music that I make. So a lot of my influence comes from jazz, and that's why I love that old school hip-hop sound, because that's where a lot of that old school sound came from, was, kind of cutting off jazz records and turning those into beats. Nice. And that's a very easy way for a producer to start off, is you take samples from a jazz song or samples from anything really, and then you just add your own drums.
Okay.
And so that's where I started as a producer. I played jazz guitar in high school, and jazz is one of my favorite genres. So there have been a lot of jazz artists that have influenced me as well. And I really love being a producer because you don't have to specify what type of music you're playing. That is entirely dependent on who you're working with. So I've been holding off on doing solo stuff for a little while just so I can hone my skills as a musician by doing different types of music with different people. So there have been some, to go back to your question, there aren't really any more huge hip-hop influences, but every classical song I hear, every jazz song I hear kind of gives me a new idea. How can I implement this new sound into a hip-hop show, or what I'm currently doing.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned jazz, and I did realize or notice how you had some saxophone and whatnot in some of your tracks.
Yep.
And I had wondered if you had a buddy that was playing sax, or if those were just
no, that was real.
repurposed.
That was my music business professor, Steve
Oh,
Cole.
cool.
He's
Awesome.
actually a big sax guy in the 90s, 2000s
Okay.
on a couple big labels, making sex music. He's very talented. It was sweet. I went to his studio in Uptown, and the song is it's one of the tracks being featured on this. It's called Jet Lag, and there's a crazy sax solo that Steve Cole and I wrote for it.
That was my favorite track that I had heard on your SoundCloud.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
I was into it.
I love that
Place
one.
mask over your nose and mouth and breathe normally, adjusting the band to secure it. Please make sure your own mask is fitted before helping anyone else. In the event of a water landing, remove the life jacket from the pouch underneath your seat and put it over your head. Safety secure.
Jazz fan too. I used to work with this baby boomer guy. Did radio in Alaska during the Vietnam War.
Wow.
and jazz was like his thing. Because during that time, jazz was pretty mainstream, all things considered. And yeah, he introduced me to Charles Mingus and Miles Davis, Joe Pass. Grant Green. I'm a big
Dude.
jazz guy.
Yeah, that's when I was taking jazz guitar lessons when I was in high school. I'd always play along with Grant Green track. Now, anytime I'm listening on the radio, I can always say like, "Yep, that's Grant Green," just from the way he does his hammer-ons and stuff.
Yeah, one thing that's really cool about jazz is they're like the OG punk rock. Like they were like, fuck your timing. We're gonna do this polyrhythmic thing.
Absolutely. Dude, I go to Ice House every single Monday, because this drummer JT Bates it's called the Jazz Implosion with JT Bates, and he just brings in all these different jazz musicians and he drums for them, and it's just an incredible experience because every time it's completely different. Like that is the absolute pinnacle of creativity in music. Just doing an entire improvised set. They do it every time, like no structure, they'll just play for like 2 hours and just make some crazy sounds. So I love jazz. The biggest influence jazz had on me is not only, where can I go musically that will get people's interest, these like really sexy chord changes, these really sexy melodic components, but it's definitely this improvisation aspect that a crowd loves. If I'm doing a hip hop show, most producers, they'll just hit play and stand there while the rapper raps, but I'm going to have a fucking synth guitar, like MIDI guitar, and I'm going to do live solos because I've been to jazz shows and I know what it looks like to see someone up on stage improvising, feeling the music, and there isn't a whole lot of that in hip hop. So I definitely grabbed that from jazz.
I heard it explained to me that jazz is a conversation. It's its own language.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not just music. It definitely transcends that,
Mm-hmm.
and it's been something that like hip hop has traversed racial bounds too. Even though it started as a black music, the word jazz itself was a pejorative. It was a term coined by white folks to talk down basically to that crowd of people. Yeah. It's kind of messed up, man.
Classic white
people. I just watched an interview with Miles Davis, and he was saying, the interviewer asked something about jazz, and he's like, "Don't call it jazz. It's not jazz. It's just what we do, man."
Music,
yeah. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, jazz has had a big impact on me. So yeah, I've come to understand that there's a music for like every kind of occasion, every
Mm-hmm.
kind of music has its time and place. I'm not sure that I agree with that entirely because I really don't like pop country. I like,
That's pretty much what everyone always says. Like,
Yeah.
I like all types of music except for pop country.
Yeah.
And that's some cookie cutter shit right there.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure everyone's seen those videos where
It's one
they'll
song
mix,
with all of it.
Yeah, they'll mix like
It's
a
every
Luke
song
Bryant
together,
and a
yeah.
Garth Brooks song, and they're
It's
like
the same song.
the same. Yeah.
No, I really do love country music though. My dad grew up in the 50s and 60s, so you better believe I grew up listening to every Johnny Cash song.
Hell yeah.
And that played a huge part. I'm a huge bluegrass fan. That's a lot of what I play on guitar, and I play a lot of old country too. So I love country, but it's not just pop country that I will switch from on the radio. It's just pretty much pop anything that was designed, anything that was written up by a team to be a hit. I don't really like the idea of that.
Yeah, it's interesting you should bring that up, the whole contrived music world. During the Buddy Holly days, during that period, all music sounded the same because it was just one producer that wanted this one sound that was a mix of like blues and
This
whatever
new rock
else
sound.
Yeah, so they tried to capitalize on the whole Elvis phenomenon,
And they'll always do that.
Yeah.
They're doing that with EDM right now.
Oh yeah.
I was gonna say, like, going off of this whole, it takes a team to build a song thing. With Justin Bieber's latest record, I won't, say this as my view because I've kind of mixed emotions about what Deadmau5 was saying about it. I watched a video where Deadmau5 went off on Justin Bieber because he kind of hijacked EDM. With Justin Bieber's latest record, he just kind of used every generic EDM idea kind of possible. And it's funny because what Deadmau5 was saying, and this is kind of the more severe end of the argument. Like I said, I don't really know where I sit on it, but he was saying, so this kid is making, it's not only about like making millions, but he's claiming this music to be his own. You know, these people wrote the songs for him. They had these crazy good electronic producers come in, make these backtracks for him, these really cool songs. And then Justin came in and, you know, recorded some vocals on them. You know, maybe not even 5% of the work involved in making the whole song. And his name's on it. And Deadmau5 was saying he just totally hijacked a culture and an industry and a total feel of music, and, you know, sold millions and got really rich off it. That's what I was talking about when I was talking about, like, that's kind of what pop music is. They'll take the hottest trend and they'll, you know, milk it until they have a new hottest trend, and they'll make just cookie cutter versions of that type of music. And, you know, I believe that anyone has freedom to do whatever they want to do in the music industry or in life, so I don't really have a problem with someone doing that, but I can see that side of the argument, like, oh, he kind of hijacked this entire genre of music and it's a hit on the radio now. So I don't know. I think they always have done that, and they always will do that as long as there's pop music, as long as there's radio, as long as there's people trying to make music to sell.
Well, and even within specific genres, you know, other artists might not appropriate from other genres, but for example, the whole hardcore scene. I used to be really into hardcore and metal music back when I was a teenager. Me and a couple friends would put on shows actually, and nice. We had this one band from Minneapolis. They were called iCollide. And they would play down in our hometown, just at American Legions and and the bowling alleys and stuff like that. Yeah, but anyway, the progression of hardcore went from, you know, this really underground kind of phenomenon where, you know, there was a common theme of positivity and you know, kind of, it was like angry hippies. You know, the message was always peace and love, but now a lot of those bands that are still around, to remain relevant, they just started making cock rock.
They got to get nasty, yeah.
Yeah, and it was, God, just some of them. I used to listen to, like, Bring Me the Horizon, and now I hear their stuff and I'm like, this sucks. Like, but yeah, it's interesting, the variety of music out there, and I feel like I've experienced, you know, almost every kind of music in American culture that I possibly can.
Yeah.
But I'm still kind of blown away by all the possibilities out there.
Absolutely.
So you were telling me that you, besides music, your creative endeavors go into graphic design and film. Why don't you tell me a little bit about both of those?
Right. So when I was a sophomore, that's kind of when I was figuring everything out career-wise, and my initial career path was radio, so I got into communications as my major, which was the best decision I've ever made, because I got to take all these classes that helped me become self-sufficient as an artist, whether those classes were graphic design, web design, social media branding, and just, you know, a bunch of others that you would usually have to pay someone to do as an artist. Like, I'd have to pay someone to make me an album cover, to design my website, to even come up with a social media plan for me. But, like, whether it's advertising or graphic design, I do everything for myself because I chose that major, and that I never thought, like, I'd be able to put so much creativity into these college classes. So with graphic design, I totally learned how to take that, you know, ADD doodling I used to do in high school, and I was able to translate that into a computer program and be able to make posters and make album artwork. I was also able to take a few film classes and study film for when I am making music videos, you know. So it was great being a communications major because I got to most of my classes were creative classes, and that
Mm-hmm.
was absolutely astonishing to me. You know, all my friends are taking business classes and accounting and whatnot, and I was just off, you know, doing voiceovers, you know, making radio shows and doing graphic design work. So if it weren't for that degree I chose, I definitely wouldn't be well versed in all these different art mediums.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I just absolutely love studying film, studying graphic design. Like if anyone hands me any poster or anything, I'll immediately go into critique mode.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting too. If you're someone that consumes a lot of variety of media and whatnot, you start to kind of sound like a dick sometimes.
Yeah,
when
absolutely.
You
Like,
start critiquing like
all these
movies
letters
and
are
stuff.
too
Like,
close to that border, you know, like
Yeah.
just on some random like coffee sign or something.
or I'll be watching like a movie with my girlfriend and I'll start picking apart like little intricacies,
Yep.
and I'm like, that shit just doesn't happen. Like I just
Every
ruined the
commercial,
movie
yeah.
for her, and I'm like, you know, she's like, just enjoy it. It's like I can't.
Right.
It's just ridiculous.
My friends hate me. Like we were watching Westworld last night, and the whole time through the episode, I just be like, "Oh, that's genius writing. Oh man, like they're using the piano roll as a motif for the control over all the robots." And everyone's just like, "Shut up, dude."
Yeah. Well, and then if you start to get really critical of some things, you're like, this is the same idea that, you know, whatever, Terminator. This is basically the Terminator with
Yeah.
different characters and whatnot.
It's
So
like once you start studying something, that you enjoy it differently.
yeah, especially if you get into sci-fi too. A lot of sci-fi ideas are just readapted,
Rehashes,
and
yeah.
yeah. So like a lot of post Cold War sci-fi stuff comes from the idea that humans have created
Yeah.
things that they cannot control.
Yep.
Like have you ever played Mass Effect? Are you a big video game guy?
No, I haven't, but I know of the game.
Yeah, so the storyline basically is like there are these technologically advanced sentient beings that they're basically just giant spaceships that can travel throughout the universe and whatnot. And this like military group tries to take control of them as a weapon against like other governments in the galaxy or whatever. And the whole crux of the story arc is like, can humans really, you know, why do we feel like we should have control to just like destroy entire worlds and nations and whatnot? So
Funny looking back at all the superheroes in the 50s and 60s and how, you know, the Red Scare influenced all that. And
yeah.
yeah, it's funny looking at how current cultures affect art, really.
Yeah.
What sells.
Yeah, definitely. So, so I'm not sure. We've been having technical difficulties, so I'm not sure what we've hit and what we haven't, but I'll just edit out whatever.
Right.
You know. So tell me a little bit about growing up. I know you you were saying that you grew up in a house in St. Paul that your dad did, and and you were saying at one point that your siblings played a part in
That's
what
right.
what music you listen to now and how that's influenced you.
Yeah, I'm my twin sister and I are the youngest of 8 kids, so a lot of siblings, all older, and they definitely played a big part in my initial musical influences. I had a lot of really, really like world-renowned classical musicians on my mom's side. You know, all of my Swiss ancestry is just riddled with world-renowned musicians.
Okay.
So we all had the music bug kind of. But when I was in grade school, I remember my older brother would, you know, in secret, my mom obviously would be very upset if she knew that he was doing this back then, but he would always put hip-hop songs on my MP3 player. So as a kid, I was already getting an ear for Eminem, like Fat Joe or whoever was huge back in early 2000s.
Did you ever listen to Eminem's first album,
Not-
Marshall Mathers LP?
You know, that's when I
You might be a
one
little
of the
young
songs.
for
Yeah,
it,
that
but-
was like, it's funny. One of the early songs that I had on my MP3 player. I always remember is it called My Name Is? He's like, hi, my name is what?
Yeah.
My name is.
Yep, that's from
That
Marsh
was like
Mathers.
one of the first Eminem songs I ever like memorized, knew all the words. I didn't know what any of it meant, obviously, but yeah, it's funny. So I had a big taste for popular rap and popular hip hop just because of my brother's influence. And then my next oldest brother, in high school, we really bonded over folk music and bluegrass. I played guitar, he played banjo, and we both sang. So, every day after school, we'd just be doing covers all day. And it takes a really long time for someone to get a feel for music. It's like learning anything, really. It takes a lot of repetition to be able to groove along with a song, to get good rhythm, to get good pitch, to have a good ear. And I attribute a lot of my skill that I have now from just playing with my brother after school every day and just singing like crazy with him.
Yeah, I think the one place where I kind of fail with music, I played bass and guitar a lot when I was younger. I still have a guitar, but I don't really pick it up that much. Mm-hmm. But where I fall behind is just tonal training, being able to pick out notes by ear.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I don't know, I just never picked that up. I probably should have taken a music theory classes.
Yeah, that's one of those repetition things. Like, now after, so I sang in choir a little bit in high school, but I sang with University of St. Thomas's choir. I was bass 2 section leader, and doing that honestly just cemented. I listen, turn on any song, even if I haven't heard it before. I can always finish the phrases along with the singer, or just do weird harmonies on top of it. So my ear is really, really good now because I was in choir 2 or 3 times a week. And then as a senior, I had some electives, so I took some music classes, and one of them was oral training, like ear training. And so in class, the teacher would just like play a chord progression, we'd have to write it down, or play a melody, we'd have to sing along, harmonize. So these last couple of years in college, I really, really honed on those skills. And I think that's really important because when I do start doing my solo work singing, I'm going to be able to hit every note on stage because I was in choir for so long, because I have that pitch, because I put so many hours into it. A lot of these kids that I'm working with, they're like, man, I really want to sing. And I'm like, have you been singing? They're like, not really. I'm like, then don't go try and sing on stage if you can't hold pitch, if you can't. People think singing's really easy, but that shit takes just as many hours as it does to go learn a guitar, So I'm very, very happy that I took those ear training courses, that I sing in the car every day. If I'm alone, I'm singing. Yeah, just like when I was a kid, it was all about having that ADHD as a kid. That's the reason I wanted to go into voice acting initially, because I just used to make sounds when I was a kid. I used to beatbox all the time. I used to do voices just because I had crazy ADHD. And so I learned how to use my voice. You learn how to use my instrument just by doing that so much. Mm-hmm. So whenever people like, what do I attribute where I am right now to? I always say probably The Simpsons, because when I was a kid, I used to watch The Simpsons every day. And I always tried to mimic all the voices on that show and always the music. So that got me into just making noises and getting to know my vocal instrument.
Someone was making a political joke about the candidates, and I don't know, they said that one of them was like Sideshow Bob meets Mr. Burns is what they called Trump.
That's exactly.
But I was like, no, you know what? That's an insult to Sideshow Bob.
Yeah, because he's smart.
Yeah. No, I used to love watching The Simpsons, and there were a couple other Fox shows that I liked. King of the Hill, which gosh. I didn't understand a lot of the King of the Hill jokes until I got older.
Oh, of course.
But there was that, and the PJs. I think that was another one that I used to always watch. It was like a claymation.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Show.
I would always get home, watch The Simpsons, Family Guy, obviously, King of the Hill, and like Malcolm in the Middle.
Did you ever watch Dragon Ball Z? when you were
No,
a
I
kid?
didn't. I never got on that. I never got on any like anime trains or anything like that.
Me and a friend would walk home from middle school every single day and go and watch DBZ at his house. And you
Hell
get
yeah.
they're 30-minute episodes, but nothing really happens.
Uh-huh.
Like they just draw out and milk out the episodes.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
really bad. It takes like 5 episodes for anything to happen.
Anything to
So
happen, so you get hooked.
so it's like they do like one.
Genius.
They do like one move like to an opponent or whatever.
Yeah. And then
like
they cut
every
to a
3
commercial, and then they.
Yeah, it
I
was.
feel you.
Now, looking back at it, it's like I couldn't sit through that
Yeah.
anymore. But so yeah, why don't we feature one of your songs or your tracks that you have? I'll probably mix in Jet Lag
right.
when we were talking about it earlier. But
Yeah, I'll
do you have any stories or anything about some of
Absolutely.
these other ones?
So there's this. Well, for Jet Lag, there's this collective called Beat Team Supreme out in LA, and it started out as all these producers who were in college together, and they used to do this weekly activity where they would put out a sample, or they'd find a sample, and they would all remix it and do their own remix of this sample, and then in class the next week they'd come together and show each other. And so they eventually they put it on SoundCloud and started getting thousands and thousands of followers doing it. Excuse me. And they eventually started opening it up to the public, these beat ciphers, these monthly beat ciphers. And they eventually got to volume 133. And I heard the samples they were using for the cipher, and I really liked them. It was kind of the first time I had heard of these beat ciphers, so I got really excited. I wanted to do it, so I hopped on it right away. You only have a week to do a 1 minute long submission, and that's kind of the whole thing. And then they put all those together in a mix, like a 30-minute long mix. So they only pick like 30 people out of, hundreds of people submitting. So I heard it right away, so I figured I could get in on it. The whole theme of Volume 133 was about collaboration. So they encouraged getting, a co-producer on it and stuff. So I hit up my buddy Quay. I got him over there, and we laid down some initial instrument ideas, and then I found this drum pack. It's on Logic as a Minimal Kit #2, and it just had all these really fun kind of clicky drum sounds, these little metallic click sounds. So all of the drums in this are from the same drum kit, and I just liked how playful it sounded, how it really created a dreamlike state. So the initial point of this song, it was a minute long, and I wanted to kind of create the song around an idea, and that idea was that someone's on an airplane and they fall asleep and start dreaming. So that's what the intro is all about. That there's that voice over the loudspeaker, and then you just enter this dream world, this magical fantasy land. And that was what the initial minute-long song was about. The version you're gonna play is the full-length version. And so we, a couple weeks later, when they released the beat cipher after we submitted it, I saw that we got on it, and that was just one of the coolest things ever for me. That was kind of my the first song I put out that like really sounded good, basically, and got recognized. Some of my favorite producers picked that song and put it on this cipher. So that was a huge confidence booster. And so I realized like this song is dope. I need to release this for real. So I planned it out. I talked to my music business professor, who was a saxophone player, and I told him that I got this dreamy song, and I want it to go from a dreamy song to a sexy dreamy song. So I wrote the rest of it, and then went out to his name's Steve Cole. I went out to his studio in Uptown, and we kind of just wrote this part for him, this really sexy saxophone part, and it was so cool for me because I got to put some music theory knowledge to use and write this line with him as he kind of, guided me doing that, because he's, as professional as they get when it comes to playing jazz saxophone. So It was so easy because he was so good that I could just tell him what I wanted to hear, and then he'd play it, and then we'd adjust. So that song was an absolute delight to make. I got a heavy hitter on it. I got one of my friends who's a really good producer, Quay, on it. And the song is just so delightful. It's just so dreamy.
Yeah,
and
I was into it.
My favorite thing when making music or any art is I just want to put someone into an environment. Like that's when I start the song, I think, where is this listener? Where do I want this listener to be, and how do I achieve that with sound effects and whatnot? Sure. And I feel like I did that very well with this track.
So when you're creating music, do you use it as sort of therapy or escapism from things in life, or is it more to complement things in your life?
It's both, definitely both. I don't think like, oh, I'm pissed off, I need to go create something angry to let that out. That's just what happens. Like,
yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at too,
Yeah.
because a lot of like metal musicians, for example, like
just
they
what
almost
comes
have to
out,
piss
right?
themselves off to
Yeah.
create something, and I'm curious with different creative personalities if they have to be in a certain state of mind to create,
Absolutely.
or if the creating itself elicits a certain vibe.
That's the beauty of being a producer. I can put out any kind of music and people won't really question it, being like, oh, this isn't a Baard track because it's really classical or something, like he's a producer, so he can do any genre he wants. So I was in Denver and I made this song called Denver. It was my first time out there, and I made this song after being there for a day, and it's just the happiest little fucking song ever, because I met some really cool people. I saw the beautiful land that is Colorado. I saw the drug culture out there, the music culture. So I was really inspired and really happy. And you can hear that with the song. Now on the flip side, if I made this beat at like 5 a.m. a couple weeks ago, and yeah, I was, kind of zooted. So you can tell, it's a really hard beat. It's very distorted. And that's the beauty of it. Whatever comes out is what's on my mind at the time. If I'm feeling aggressive, if I'm feeling grimy, or if I'm feeling sexual or whatever, that's what comes out in the music. And I try and create every day, which is great, because then it's not like, okay, I feel really angsty today, so it's time to make angsty music. It's just, okay, I'm making music today, also feel angsty, so some angsty stuff might come out.
Okay, sure.
Other times, I try and see, this is where it comes in other parts. Well, this is where like other parts of my music career will come into play. I want to do commercial music for sure, because like I said, I love having an idea and then working around that. That's a totally different way to create a track, rather than I'm just going to let the music flow out of me. Because when you approach a song a different way, you're going to come out with a different result. And I want to do that as many different ways as possible, just so I can learn which ways are best for me. Mm-hmm. So I definitely love structuring things around that. Like, I want to make a song that would be good in like a life insurance commercial. So, so I want to identify what makes a life insurance song, something kind of hopeful, something nostalgic, something just sweet. So that's what I'll make. And as a producer, your goal, especially when working with other artists, is to think about what does this need now, and what instrument will it take to give that feeling. Mm-hmm. That's like what producing is down to the essence. Like whether if I'm a recording producer that just records bands, or a songwriter, or someone who makes my own music, the biggest thing is, what do I need in this song to accomplish the sound that I want? And approaching that differently really helps build that ability. So one of my really, really good friends from high school went out to college at Denison University in Ohio, and he met some really cool kids out there, some rappers. So over time, I got acquainted with them over the internet, and realized I'm making old school hip hop beats. These guys are rapping on old school hip hop beats, so I need to collaborate with them. So one of the guys, Sarab, he hit me up and wanted me to do a remix of his song Serenity. It's a pretty fast hip-hop song with a classic old school beat, really really nice beat, and he had a really cool music video for it as well. It's if you go to the song on SoundCloud, it's the original's linked in the description. You definitely check that out. But so he sent that to me and he wanted me to remix it. So I slowed it down a bunch, and I even used the original beat in the intro. And I got a buddy of mine, Nick Zarn, to play some trumpet on the intro as well. And I just wanted to make some jazzy electronic, just some slow, wavy stuff. Mm-hmm. So that was my idea with this one, and I was lucky enough to be able to achieve it. It has a really slow, jazzy intro, I wanted to make an idea and then make the song around this idea. And the idea was that someone's waking up to an alarm in bed, the phone's ringing, just life is complicated. You're sitting in bed, like all this shit floating around your head. And because the song's about serenity. So I even added some musical elements that showed that, like, there's definitely some dissonance in the beginning. A lot of the chords that I chose reflect the need for serenity. So this was very much so a concept piece, and I just really loved the outcome of the track. My buddy Suna mastered it, so it sounds really good. Sarab really loved it, and we even shot a buddy of mine here at St. Thomas even kind of made a music video for it. So it was kind of like a big release for me. Okay. A really important song, and I don't know, I just like the song. It's different. There's a lot of like wavy music out there, but this song I haven't heard many mixed jazz in the way that I did with this one. And I think this song definitely defines me as an artist because it was totally from the heart. And it's kind of unique too.
Coming out the house like an extra.